Good afternoon, Charlie Flight. I'm Cadet Kincaid, as you know, this week's Drill and Ceremonies Officer. And today I'll be hitting you with a briefing on route step. So, what is route step? When do we use route step? Why do we use route step? Let's talk about it. So, first off, what is route step? So, as you know, normally after doing a forward march, your flight is marching at attention. So, heads locked, arms locked, obviously the elbows are locked, not the shoulders, but arms locked, and you're looking straight forward, right? You're caged. In route step, you're still doing that, but you're allowed to navigate around obstacles, and it switches up your movements from doing column movements to doing incline movements. And the reason for that is we can mess up our joints and trip if we're doing column movements and marching at attention on non-concrete or uneven surfaces. So to get around that, we do route step, which allows the flight to step however will keep them upright and keep the dress and interval and all that without tripping or falling over or any of that. So we can use it to go upstairs. We can use it to turn the flight on grass, or we can use it to turn the detail on carpet, such as at the hangar. A great implication of route step is that you get to tell the guidon bearer or guide, whichever one you have, to just guide to some side of whatever you're marching on. I would suggest against telling them to guide to the left side of something, because as you know, the whole flight is going to have to cover off the guidon bearer. So if you have your guidon bearer guide to the left, then essentially a majority of your elements will be marching off of whatever surface that you want to be guiding on. So for route step, let's stick to telling the guidon bearer to guide to the right side of, say, the troop walk, right? Because that's a curved road. So trying to do a bunch of column half movements on it can get pretty tricky, and you'll have to do them pretty rapidly. And it will really not work out if you have a long element. If you have like 5 people in your element, then it's gonna be very difficult to do a bunch of half column movements all along that troop walk. So the way we can get around that is just telling the guidon, after putting the flight in route step, of course, which we do by saying route step, arch, and that can be called on either leg. Just make sure that obviously you're doing the preparatory command and the executionary command on the same foot. So if you're doing route step as your right heel hits the ground, make sure you say harch as the right heel hits the ground, and then obviously vice versa for the left leg. So what we can do to get around that kind of curved road is, number one, that's a long path, right? It's not a traditional path. So another advantage of route step is that we can put the flight into double time, which makes us go even quicker, and then it's easier to meet time hacks that way. But obviously be careful if you have an injured flight mate, then you probably won't be able to do this. But you can put the flight into double time and then go even faster, have the guidon bearer guide to the right side of the troop walk, and then you can you can navigate that obstacle very smoothly, just with those 2 simple instructions. I also want to cover how you get out of route step. So we know getting into route step, that's route step, horch, but how do you get out of route step, right? So one of the ways that you can do that is put the flight back at attention. Obviously there's at ease march, but today we'll just be covering how to get the flight back to attention. So after you've navigated your obstacle or you've gotten off of that non-concrete surface, you can say flight tench hut, which although some people will instinctively want to stop and stand at attention, what that means while you're marching is that the flight will return to marching at attention, not standing at attention. Route step can be crucial to the safety of the flight. For example, going upstairs. Obviously, if we're marching at attention, we're going to trip over stairs unless the flight commander puts us into route step. Or those pesky poles, metal poles on our way to Sunken Gardens. If you put the flight into route step instead of having to stop right in front of them and go into mark time and be like, hey, I will not make it. Instead, we can just swerve around it and then come back to as if that obstacle was not even there in the first place, if we're on route step. Summary of what I went over in this briefing. I went over why we do route step, how to get into and out of route step, the implications of double time in route step and how that can help you meet your time hacks, how to instruct the guides and guidon bears during route steps and avoiding obstacles, and also how route step can help the flight avoid obstacles just by calling them movement. We also went over incline movements, which is called similarly to column movements, except the execution of it is different in that not only will the flight not go into half step after, but the flight will not perform facing movements to get into the proper positions because, as we said, we don't want to damage our joints and all that. So, with that being said, unfortunately, no one's here to ask any questions. Otherwise, I'd answer them. Thank you so much for your time. This concludes my briefing.